Hello, this is Brian. Today is Tuesday, February 13th, 2024. I'm here at Lake Hodges Park, here in the northern edge of San Diego. Time for an episode of Trees of San Diego. Today's episode focuses on yet another species of eucalyptus growing here in Southern California. And this is it right here. Silver dollar gum. It's got probably a couple of other common names. This is a Eucalyptus polyanthemos. So here is yet one of many species of eucalyptus trees here planted in Southern California. And a lot of our eucalyptus-rich heritage now is owed to the original plantings of eucalyptus back in the 1800s to try to use these generally fast-growing trees for the burgeoning railroad building, for rail lines, for railroad ties. So these trees are pretty fast-growing generally. However, their wood was found to be unsatisfactory, so we're left with a lot of unused eucalyptus trees scattered throughout Southern California pretty much. Other species were planted here for ornamental purposes because a lot of these eucalyptus trees are very amenable to cultivation in our mild climate. Eucalyptus polyanthemos is no exception. Eucalyptus polyanthemos is generally a medium, sometimes quite large tree. And being that it's a eucalyptus, it's a member of the Myrtle Family, the Myrtaceae. And it's a pretty common landscape tree here in Southern California. And like a lot of other eucalyptus species, the leaves are polymorphous. In other words, differently shaped depending on the age of the branches on which they're growing. So I'm going to go into that right now. Eucalyptus polyanthemos is one of many species of eucalyptus that have juvenile foliage, intermediate foliage, and adult foliage. So a typical adult leaf on Eucalyptus polyanthemos is like this here. This is a typical, kind of narrow, a little bit broader below the middle of the leaf, and then gently tapering to a little pointy tip. Kind of a bluish, grayish green color. So this is the typical adult foliage of Eucalyptus polyanthemos. So these are the leaves, the adult leaves that are usually higher up in the trees. Now, these juvenile sprouts here, these young stems, this is what the juvenile foliage looks like. Broadly, almost circular. But then as you can see, it's broader below the middle, and then it tapers off at the tip to a point, kind of like the adult foliage. But again, much broader. It's much broader. So this is the juvenile foliage. The intermediate foliage is, well, intermediate between this and these leaves here. I would say some of these are a little bit more intermediate right here. These are a little bit more intermediate, as you can see here. They're broader than the adult foliage, but narrower than the juvenile foliage. Very common characteristic of eucalyptus trees, and a lot of plant species in general, not just relegated to Myrtle Family and eucalyptus trees. But so what we have here is a fairly graceful tree. Unlike a lot of other eucalyptus species, maybe not as strongly weeping. A lot of eucalyptus trees have very pendulous branches that droop and weep. This one does to a certain extent, but it's not as hard, or not as much as some of the other species of eucalyptus. but still pretty graceful. It's a beautiful tree, very good shade tree. And then we got this bark here. A lot of eucalyptus has smooth underbark, and as the tree's girth expands every year, it starts peeling off in these big strips. Well, as you see here, a lot of bark peels. Bark underneath is relatively smooth, with these huge, big deciduous strips that peel off more heavily when the tree is growing. So these look like old bark peels from the previous year's spring. But then as you can see, as you go higher in the tree, the bark gets smoother, and it still peels away in strips as the branches and everything expand in girth. But so if you're looking for a tree that's not messy, eucalyptus, most species of eucalyptus are not going to be your cup of tea because they drop a lot of foliage. They drop a lot of twigs, a lot of seed capsules, and bark peels. So let me go ahead and get a profile pic of this tree here, and I'm going to start going into some more characteristics like the flowers and seed capsules. So, the eucalyptus flowers, the Eucalyptus polyanthemos flowers are born on these clusters at the end of the twigs. Sometimes even born on juvenile sprouts as well. See here, the Eucalyptus polyanthemos flowers are very small, creamish white colored, and they're apetalous, do not form petals. So all you can see here are the radiating stamens with the big pistil sticking up from the middle inside of it. So this is the flower cluster of Eucalyptus polyanthemos. So other species have more noticeable flowers. This one's a little more humble in its floral display. Usually winter and early spring. And then eventually ripen and turn into seed capsules. Like juvenile seed capsules right here. Really small, cup shaped. Top of it sunken in. Very small. Has some of the smaller seed capsules that I've seen. Here we go. Here's what they look like when they're ripe. They're kind of tan brown. The top of it's sunken in, and then you have a few chambers where the seeds are inside the chambers. Get out more of the light right here. As you can kind of see, they're really small. Some of the smaller seed capsules and flowers are ornamental eucalyptus trees. You can see here some more flower clusters right up here in the tree. Now you'll notice, you'll look at these buds here. These buds, it's hard to tell just looking at them this way, but there is a cap. You can see the buds are closed. So what's going to happen is those buds are going to break open at the top. There we go. Try to get here. Try to get a good view of these flower buds. And you can see these are the flower buds. So what happens is the top of the flower bud's going to separate and fall off. And then it's going to start opening up right here. These are after the cap falls off. What that's called is an operculum. The flower bud has a has a cap on the end of it. So what'll happen is the tip of the flower bud's going to fall off, and then the stamens are going to open up. Again, it's called an operculum. And that's what a eucalyptus is. So they have these bud caps that open up, and then the stamens come out. Again, species of eucalyptus do not form petals. There are no petals on these flowers. You can see here, it's just a bunch of stamens radiating out from the center of the flower. So I'm going to go over to some slightly larger trees. I want to get some footage of them, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. So here I am at a couple of taller specimens. Earlier you saw those little bushes of what look like saplings. A lot of times roots. A lot of these are actually root sprouts. They come up from the roots of the tree. So these juvenile leaves. Here are some taller specimens here of Eucalyptus polyanthemos. This one looks like it's lost a lot of its bark peels, revealing the beautiful bark underneath. Very nice. These trees getting up to 60, 70 feet, not out of the question. Very nice. And when they do get a little bit bigger, their lower branches tend to be a little more pendulous. So you get a little bit of a weeping aspect on the lower branches, more so than the upper branches, as you see here. So this is a pretty graceful tree, but again, we're talking about weak wood. These trees probably should be planted a little further away from the house if you have, and they need a lot of room to grow. So if you're trying to grow eucalyptus, you need to have some space away from your house so the branches don't drop, because that's one thing with eucalyptus trees, they are prone to lose their branches a lot, A, and B, they are also prone to be knocked over in wind. A lot of the trees that get knocked over in windstorms are eucalyptus trees, so you gotta watch out for that. But if you have the space and the distance on your property, drought tolerant, hardy, fragrant, albeit very flammable because they're very resinous trees, Eucalyptus polyanthemos is a pretty nice looking tree. Another beautiful Australian native that does very well in Southern California. So there you have it, Eucalyptus polyanthemos. Beautiful tree. Another Aussie native that does well here in Southern California. Well, here's one last shot here as I get ready to end this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed being able to, hope this video helped in being able to identify yet another tree that's very commonly planted here in San Diego and in Southern California. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next Trees of San Diego.